Mr. Ndlela, good evening to you. Earlier today, you were quoted as saying that the former president and leader of the MK party is not power hungry. He never said he wanted to go to parliament. How does that fit in with him bringing a counter application in this very same court case where he even called for 6 judges to recuse themselves because they were part of the very decision that led him to be sent to jail in the first place? Balance the two for us.
Well, I think there may be a misconception here on your end in the sense that President Zuma stated that if the people want him to lead and become president of this country, that will be the case. And hence we're gunning for a 2/3 majority to change this constitution to ensure that we bring President Zuma into power. But also, when I said that President Zuma, in this case, is not power hungry, I meant exactly that. President Zuma is not a power hungry man, he's a selfless leader. And based on whatever decision we take at that point in time, when we win the 2/3 majority, when we get into government, we'll make a determination at that point in time. And he will then make a decision if he wants to be president or if he wants to deploy someone else. That's just what our position has always been.
How does that make sense? That he will make a decision about whether or not he wants to lead, or he may put forward someone else in order to lead as president. And of course, all of this is predicated on the MK winning the election hands down. In other words, defeating all of the parties in contention. How would that work if he is not allowed to be a member of parliament?
Well, that's your view and a misconception that it's a difficult issue to understand. We're saying to you that there's other options as well. President Zuma doesn't have to be, president of the country if he doesn't want to be. That's the first point. What I'm also going to say to you is that there's other options, and those options are with the UN Human Rights Committee, of which there was a similar case in Sri Lanka, where a court, similar to what is happening here, upheld, a court order that led to a political leader in that country not being able to run for elections. And guess what? The United Nations Human Rights Committee overturned it, and he was able to run for elections. So it's not the end of the road for President Zuma.
Are you suggesting that he may end up at this UN court?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're taking this matter to the United Nations Human Rights Committee and to get it overturned. So there's many ways to skin a cat here, clearly. But also, let's focus on the fact that we want a 2/3 majority so we can change this constitution that's based on Roman Dutch law, that doesn't represent us, and that is totally being abused continuously by judges that are not even elected by our people. And 6 of them, who ought to have recused themselves, still continue to preside over the matter. I mean, how is it possible that these 10 judges, unelected, make decisions that affect and infringe on the rights of South Africans, who, by the way, want their leader, in the form of President Zuma, to be in parliament? So that's just, again, the nature of this system.
All right, let's get the views of Professor Cotze. Prof, I hope you were able to hear Mr. Ndlela's submissions. Let's begin with the first element about the former president not being power hungry, and therefore he may not necessarily want to go to parliament. He can still send someone else, but there is also the confirmation now in studio through Mr. Ndlela that he actually may still take this further because he doesn't feel satisfied by our courts in South Africa. So he may take it to a court outside of South Africa.
Yeah, that is very difficult to bring the different ends together because on the one hand, it is very clear President Zuma is absolutely fully involved in this election campaign. He is now, to a large extent, the personification or the face of the MK party. And therefore, there's almost no way in which one can argue that it is not for in order for his involvement is in order to be able to receive the maximum support, the maximum power in Parliament. And that is why this party talks about a 2/3 majority also. So it is all about power, but that applies to all political parties. All of them want to get the maximum out of this election. And that includes President Zuma, that includes the MK party, even without him as the leading figure in Parliament, but also the other parties. So I don't think it can be dismissed by anyone as if this is an effort of being there for the sake of other things except to have the most power possible in Parliament. I think what is also now introduced as a new element is the fact of going beyond the South African judiciary or the legal system. In some instances, there is the possibility to go, for example, to the African Court of Human and People's Rights. For example, the public protector is in the process of doing that. But to a large extent, I think we have to look at our own constitution, and our constitution is saying the Constitutional Court is the Supreme Court in South Africa, is the court with the highest authority, and there's no possibility for any form of official appeal beyond that. So whatever it is taken to in any other format, the Human Rights Commission is simply a commission. It has absolutely no legal powers. South Africa is a member of the United Nations, but it hasn't got any legal authority over South Africa. It's simply an advisory body of the United Nations. So nothing can be done from that quarters. There's no other international court that has any authority over the South African legal system. So in that sense, today's judgment is, for all purposes, in terms of the South African legal system and the South African constitutional dispensation, the final say.
Prof, before I come back to Mr. Ndlela in studio, you constantly hear this messaging from the MK party that the judges in South Africa, first of all, they're not elected by the people of this country, and what authority do they have over someone who is elected by the people? Not so long ago, it was former President Zuma himself who constantly reminded people that the state is made up of three arms: the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature, that's Parliament. Today, the comments are to such an extent that these judges are almost a law unto themselves. Make sense of that for us, and how we, ordinary South Africans, should digest that kind of language from the MK.
Well, first of all, the way in which our judges are appointed is that the initiative comes from the public. The public can nominate some of them. It goes to the Judicial Service Commission, which is a combination of persons within the legal fraternity, as well as members of Parliament, multi-party composition of members of Parliament. They do the public interviewing as the representatives of all of us. That is why we have an election like the one of next week. So they are there on behalf of the public to determine which judges ultimately are the best placed to fill the positions on the bench. And then there's a vote in the National Assembly about it. There must be a majority for all the candidates there. And then it is referred to the president for the final appointment. That one must compare to what some would say are elected judges. Now, take, for example, the way in which the American Supreme Court is constituted, where the President of the United States makes the proposal or nomination of judges. It goes through the two houses on Capitol Hill. Ultimately, there's a vote in the Senate, which is a political body, and then the judge is basically elected there. And as a result of that, we have today now a Supreme Court in the United States, which is absolutely politicized. They make judgments which are not about the law, but very much about political considerations. Now, we have a choice. Either what we have today or that type of system that we see in the United States at the moment, where the system is actually being abused.